In heaven, children are taught chiefly by representatives suited to their capacity. These are beautiful and full of wisdom from within, beyond all belief. In this way, an intelligence that derives its soul from good is gradually instilled into them. I will here describe two representatives that I have been permitted to see, from which the nature of others may be inferred. First, there was a representation of the Lord's rising from the sepulchre, and at the same time of the uniting of his human with the divine. This was done in a manner so wise as to surpass all human wisdom, and at the same time in an innocent, childlike manner. An idea of a sepulchre was presented, and with it an idea of the Lord, but in so remote a way that there was scarcely any perception of its being the Lord, except seemingly afar off. And for the reason that in the idea of a sepulchre there is something of death. And this was thus removed. Afterwards, they cautiously admitted into the sepulchre something atmospheric, with an appearance of thin vapor, by which, with proper remoteness, they signified spiritual life in baptism. Afterwards, I saw a representation by the angels of the Lord's descent to those that are bound, and of his ascent with these into heaven, and this with incomparable prudence and gentleness. In adaptation to the childlike mind, they let down little cords almost invisible, very soft and tender, by which they lighten the Lord's ascent, always with a holy solicitude that there should be nothing in the representation bordering upon anything that did not contain what is spiritual and heavenly. Heaven and Hell, passage 335. And the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene comes early, while it was yet dark, to the sepulchre, and looks at the stone that was taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runs and comes to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and says to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we do not know where they have put him." Then Peter and the other disciple went forth, and they came to the sepulchre. And they both ran together. And the other disciple outran Peter and came first to the sepulchre. And stooping down, he looks at the sheets laid out. However, he did not come in. Then Simon Peter comes following him, and he went into the sepulchre. And he beholds the sheets laid, and the cloth which was around his head, not laid with the sheets, but apart, folded up into one place. Then therefore the other disciple entered also, who came first to the sepulchre, and he saw and believed. For they did not yet know the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead. Then the disciples went away again to themselves. But Mary stood at the sepulchre, weeping outside. Then, as she wept, she stooped to the sepulchre, and she beholds two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus was laid. And they say to her, "Woman, why art thou weeping?" She says to them, because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have put him." And saying these things, she turned back, and beheld Jesus standing, and she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus says to her, "Woman, why art thou weeping? Whom dost thou seek?" She, thinking that it was the gardener, says to him, "Sir, if thou hast carried him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus says to her, "Mary." She, turning, says to him, "Rabboni," which is to say, Teacher. Jesus says to her, "Do not touch me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God." Mary Magdalene comes, reporting to the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had said these things to her. As men rise again after death, therefore the Lord willed to undergo death, and to rise again the third day, but to the end that he might put off everything human that he had had from the mother, and might put on the divine human. For everything human that the Lord took from the mother, he rejected from himself by temptations, and finally by death. And by putting on a human from the divine itself that was in him, he glorified himself, that is, made his human divine. Therefore in heaven his death and burial do not mean death and burial, but the purification of his human and glorification. That this is so the Lord taught by this comparison, with wheat falling into the earth, which must die that it may bear fruit. The same is involved in what the Lord said to Mary Magdalene in the Gospel of John chapter 20, verse 17. "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended unto my Father."